Hello, my name is Jubal, and today is something different. If you guys are wondering, where I've been or not, um, I was kind of busy. Yeah, I was kind of busy. With some things in my life, and yeah, and I want to make another direct response video of I watched on YouTube called what's it called? Is school causing more violence? So here we go. So and I'll say this. I'll say this. Like I always said, like growing up, I will get bullied. Like I'll get bullied. But when you get bullied, you get resentment so hard that you make plans about like how you execute that person, like why this person bullying me, Now I think about it, I was like, why this person bullies me a lot, Is it because the way I look, the way I dress, the way my personality was as a kid, because I was hyper, it questions you a lot, Now, after seeing those videos and that one particular, it hits home because there's some bully victims. I know everybody talked about in YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, or anything. Because Twitter mostly because there's so many fights. The fight video you've seen, that it will make like the world star really jealous now. But like even back then, if you guys remember, World Star was like the main website of watching fights, and a little bit of gore. You see like the most bloodiest thing back then. And now there's so much gore on Twitter. Is insane. And those death videos I was hearing about, it's pretty nasty. And hold on. And it really bothers me mostly because because after seeing those fight videos, and I realized with me, every victim is different. I wouldn't say I'm a victim, but I never got into a fight. Have I seen it? Yes. Have you like participated in one? No. That's a big no. But and what I'm trying to get, sorry, drifting away, is that the answer is maybe, in my opinion, because the way the kids are now, like I'm already an adult already, and I explain it that it gets boring and tiring because every time you walk into school you're expecting to see a fight, and now everybody treats it like a prison because prison, what guys do or what women do or what children do, they fight for whatever unnecessary reasons, you know and it gets boring, and it gets tiring that you're always looking for justice, you know and everybody has one common answer, is to expel kids, like we've been saying that. When I say we, I'm talking about the kids who are going out of high school or in high school, that they should be expelling kids who are like causing fights, like the saying, I'll mess up the saying, but all it takes is one rotten apple to run everybody, you know rotten every other apples. And it's true, and I seen it, you know like I seen one fight from P. This was in middle school, which all starts, and it transfers all the way to high school. If you're like, they use the term bad kid, but I'll say the worst kid, because now you're just getting into fights no reason. And what I'm hearing is kids getting away scot free from whatever punishment. And I know everybody's saying expel them. I'll say I semi agree. You know, you know, like like because we have alternatives. I get that, but sometimes those alternatives doesn't work. Like sending someone to juvie because of one reason. It sounds harsh. That's even worse than going to public school, actually, because you're with the bad kids, or they say the villains of society. You meet the predators, you meet the racists, you meet not terrorists, but like evil kids with evil intentions are in there at school. I'm talking about juvenile detention. Like I see that, because when I see that as like a wake up call, there's only a few certain kids who have wake up calls, in juvenile detention I'm talking about, but once you go to prison, it's too late, when you awaken, like, damn, I'm gonna be here forever. You're looking around the walls, you're like, damn, I'm gonna be here, but I feel like I kind of get that alternative, but the way how everything's processing and moving around these days, you gotta expel the kids, because I know the consequence is those kids are not gonna get jobs in the future. I get that. It's the only way to teach, like, and it starts with the principal. If the principal is not doing anything, then what, like, what the heck? And recently, you know, like, I remember I was talking to my counselor. This was before summer break came. You know, my parents came in for I forgot what I was asking them, but my dad having a conversation. Why, I said, why are the kids, not going to class, or why is not the security, like, not putting their power into play, like, not suspending them, expel them. I said, well, the school board is not helping the counselors, so they can't do anything. And my hand was like, wow, you can't do anything, huh? And I started thinking, shit, then I don't trust my counselor then. In my opinion, because I've seen people don't trust their counselors when it comes to their school thing, because, either they fuck up your school career if you're proceeding that route, or they'll fuck up the classes you really want. You know, that's not the intent of the school causes violence. I say yeah, you know. And for disclaimer, this is part 2 of school problems. You know, so end of disclaimer. But anyway, uh, you know, even to the point now, you know, like with me, I don't trust counselors. Even when I was having like a bad moment, like I don't trust them. The same thing with lawyer. You know, I'll be honest here. I have a lawyer. When you think about it, you're like, wait, you had a lawyer? Like, was there a civil case going on with you? Like, what's going on? No, I always had a lawyer throughout when I was in school. And I was telling my mom that I don't trust lawyers anymore because how everything's processing, how everybody's not getting justice. I feel like that's gonna happen to me. My mom said, "Why do you think like that?" And I could be wrong. Because you say get a lawyer, but you know, it depends on the situation you're on. With school, that's mostly important. That's why I told her the reason I don't trust lawyers because I don't want to get screwed over. If that kid or that adult, that girl, woman, or whatever gets away scot free, then what will my lawyer do? What will the state police do? What would anybody do with the case if I get myself into? When it comes to school. I don't want to start a whole ass war and spending the rest of my money just to find them. It becomes a shit show. And even though that's me, I know everybody is different, but for me, I don't trust lawyers or counselors because how those two things are really processing right now in this world. And the violence at school is all right, but I always question myself, why are these kids fighting every day? Like it could be the first day or the last day of school, and you start questioning and like damn, this is gonna be it. And I know everybody's train of thought is to stay away from it. Even though you stay away from it, even if you're targetable or not, you get yourself into it because some idiot dragged you in, even though you're not part of it, So yeah, nobody. I want to say it's the school because it could go both ways. That's what I'm trying to say. Like the school, the teacher's already leaving, meaning they're already quitting on the spot. Because they have no hope for the kids. And the parents, the parents are not parenting anymore because once you're having kids, you always want to what's it called, show off of like, oh, I have a kid, I'm gonna be able to take care he or she for the rest of my life, and that's it, and I have a solution for them, my solution, and I talked about this with my mom mostly, like my solution is for the new parents who are having kids nowadays is bring back those. I remember like back in the early 2000s, they used to have parenting class, about like how to parent, how to do this when your child's deaf, do's and don'ts, in my opinion, is to bring back those parenting classes, and have to make it mandatory for high school, because in high school or middle school mostly, that's where uh, teenage parents starts coming to play, you know, and two is expel the kids, those two things, because it has to work, that's the only way the kids to awaken, like, hey, school's not to play around, it could mess up your career in the future, I'm talking about high school mostly, because it could affect your career if you succeed or not, but it should, like, be strict enough to, like, hey, this is gonna happen. And also another thing, the security in the high schools, not to sound the guy, to put lethal force on students when they get out of hand, but they don't even have tasers. Pistols, I kind of get that, they'll be like too over securitized. Like, why you have a pistol in a high school where kids, they'll be, I would imagine their hands gonna hold to securitize the whole school building and the outside, because in my high school, the security guard don't even have tasers, they don't even have tasers or anything. Like, I was like, how do you get it? How do you become like an LUSD security with no protection for them at least? The blunt weapon will work. The taser might work. Because it'll put down a man. Real easy, just like that. In my opinion, because those are all the flaws of the LUSD school. Now all the schools have their own privatized policing, but what, because in my high school we have a police officer who works at the school, but he has his own office, and that dude won't do shit. That's was like a couple years ago until now. How the school violence were increasing. Now they're doubling up the police funds for the schools. But hey, they gotta work. And for me, I've been a good kid, and when I mean a good kid is I've been a really good kid. How sound like a person exposing it, but I never had criminal records. I never had like moments where I was gonna commit suicide, And another disclaimer is fuck YouTube with their guidelines and bullshit. So I'll just say, but I'm not gonna commit suicide or anything, because I know there's some kids my age right now already committed suicide because they can't handle it. Because not only that, they got you by the balls. Like, what I mean by the balls is that the bully on the internet, and now at school physically, and now the school doesn't help with the situation, and the parents, holy shit, that's like adding fuel to the fire. And the parents act surprised why my kid committed suicide. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, what happened? But these are the questions that has to be answered. No matter phone calls for the mental health at hospital, it's the school. Like, the parents, that's what all they could do. Excuse me. you know. Like the school, because I remember schools used to be fun, but now over the years it becomes less fun because they want to treat you like an adult, but at the same time you're trying to have fun, you know. And it yeah, because as kids growing up, we always told that learning will be fun at school. That's such a big lie, And I remember saying this to my mom, saying like, school is only there to make friends, you know. And I stick with that saying because how things were turning out today. Because nobody's giving a fuck about the teachers. I feel bad, yes, and at the same time don't, you know, because there's a lot of bad teachers too. They also create bad kids too, and they'll be surprised one of them retaliates and starts beating the hell out of them until they disappear or the kids disappear. You know what I mean? And it's kind of interesting to think about. And plus, there's also like school shooters too that also the bully kids. Uh, but yeah, so the answer for that is the school cause of violence is a maybe, in my opinion. So, that's what I could say, My name is Jubal, and see ya.